they never stopped developing nuclear weapons. Netanyahu, of course, has been warning about Iranian, nuclear breakouts since 1995. He said that Iran was on track to get nukes by 2000. That was 25 years ago, and we're to expect that if they were really that close, that they don't have nukes today. It's ridiculous.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Boom! Welcome everyone to Prove to Me that You're Alive, the most shadow banned podcast in the world. If you think you know what a shadow ban looks like, I dare you to go check out the podcast. Today's guest in the geopolitical arena, he needs no introduction, but I will try to do some justice to introducing this wonderful human being. He's a deputy executive director, task force and national and homeland security, former U.S. Army HQ staff officer, national security strategist, and geopolitical expert, and military historian. And I just want to say this by introducing him that Mr. Pyne, little do you know, you are doing great service to coming to actually talk to the people. Believe it or not, with the recent events that happened, I actually, when US dropped that, us America, when we dropped that 30,000 pound bomb and somewhere in the middle of the desert in Iran, I actually witnessed young people go to panic attacks and start heaving. It may sound funny, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are panicking, a lot of people are worried. And that's why, again, little do you know, you are doing great service by coming and actually speaking to the people. So, Mr. Pyne, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I just before I start, picking your brain and everything. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been writing extensively on the Russo-Ukrainian war and where that stands, and then I had kind of a hiatus, probably for 4 or 5 weeks. I had some other issues that I was looking at, and then I wrote a couple of articles on the 12-day war, I guess, as Trump likes to say it. But I had my World War III alert meter on high alert, and now it's gone down to a more moderate level. So I'm happy to see that things have quieted down a little bit.
Yeah, so I would encourage everyone to go visit your Substack. You do write some wonderful articles. I did have a chance to read one yesterday. So before we talk about everything that's going on now and the 12-day war, as you coined it, um, I wanted to ask you about the thing that happened, I don't know, a month ago. So basically, that huge operation, we call it Pautina in Russian. The what do you call it, spider web, and it's going to tie into what we will talk about later. But so the crazy thing is that according to the Russian nuclear doctrine, anyone that's responsible, everyone that's backing some sort of an operation like this is obviously responsible. So I just wanted to ask you, because it kind of went over people's heads, we stopped talking about it. How close were we to a nuclear war, first of all? How much right did Russia have to respond to those that are responsible? And as you said, your World War meter, like how close were we to a total collapse? If you could kind of sum it up for us.
Yeah, Operation Spiderweb, of course, was the Ukrainian operation that was partially successful. It was drone attacks that targeted the Russian bomber fleet, nuclear bomber fleet, consisting of two 95 Bears and also not blackjacks, but backfires. Hit some backfires too, and which are intermediate range bombers that can be made, intercontinental with, Russian refueling tankers. But it was essentially appears to have been masterminded in with the British. The British came up with a very similar plan that Ukraine copied, and was all about drone-based attacks on an enemy, nuclear arsenal. Um, Obviously, Russia. I mean, Russia is the only enemy that the Europeans are concerned with right now. They view Russia as a big threat. Of course, it's a threat of NATO's own making because Putin tried to join NATO twice in 2000, 2002. He then came up with a mutual security agreement in 2009, which was reiterated in 2021. But you're right. This definitely did cross the Russian nuclear threshold because, well, the Ukraine is claiming it disabled or destroyed 34% of Russia's nuclear bomber fleet. The reports I've seen from Russia, they're claiming it was 4 to 5%. So probably it's closer to maybe the 10% range. And the Russians, certainly during the Ukraine war, they typically are much more truthful in their reporting than the Ukraine and Western side, which is we basically just parrot and reiterate whatever Zelensky says, and he literally everything he says is a lie. I don't recall him telling the truth anytime, other than the fact that Russia invaded and that was illegal under international law. Everything else that he's ever stated has been completely false. And unfortunately, President Trump and the Trump administration have essentially sided with Zelensky after a sincere attempt to try to moderate an end to the war. They've decided to pursue Biden's war in Ukraine and fight it to the last Ukrainian. The only difference is, for the next 10 years, we're going to be selling Ukraine arms instead of giving and handing them over for free. But in terms of the World War III threat, if it was any leader of the Russian leader other than President Vladimir Putin, I would have said that it was a Cuban Missile Crisis. We should have gone to DEFCON 3 or above, to kind of assure that Russia that we were ready to respond if they tried to engage in a nuclear strike against the U.S. or NATO. Certainly, one of the most likely possibilities was that Putin could simply use one or more nukes against Ukraine. That would not trigger Article 5. The U.S. would certainly stay out of that. We probably would not even respond militarily, let alone with a nuclear response. So really, that's they could, as I wrote in an article in 2022, back in I think April. Yeah, it was in April of 2022, just a couple months after they invaded. I said, using a nuclear weapon over Kyiv that didn't kill anyone, but could be seen by everyone, and wounded some people, thousands of people, would be Putin's essentially trump card to win the war swiftly. The other way, of course, would be massing a massive amount of Russian troops in Belarus, which could then be used to retake Kyiv.
Yeah, so as soon as this thing happened, right? Like I was born and raised in Western Ukraine, but I have friends and family in Russia. I'm in a constant contact with both sides, Ukraine and Russia. So I reached out to some people in Ukraine, the super pro nationalists, the people that are on the border of neo-Nazis. They're happy. They're jumping around. They're like, yay, we really hit Russia. I contact some people in Russia, and a lot of people in Russia are mad. They don't understand why their government is not responding more strict, let's say. So I don't want to stay on this subject for too long because I want to get back to your article that you written about the last developments. But my question is, Russia kept saying, red line, like Ukraine was a red line, then Kursk was a red line. Now, like, how many red lines, and why do you, you said that it's because it's Putin, but do you think that, like, it's tough? Like, do you think that what would you do in this situation, really, if you were in the place of a president? Because to me, it seems like now the whole world is looking like, well, Russia won't do anything anyway. So do you think that they should have? Because besides nuclear weapons, last time we spoke, we seen what Oreshnik can do, so they have other means of basically, I don't know, calming down Zelensky and his regime. So I guess, my question is, does Russia have the right to respond drastically? And what I'm heading to is because a lot of people are now saying that there was some kind of a agreement between Zelensky and Putin like they're basically his people, and Zelensky's daddy, they're on the phone, they're talking, and they're doing this for show. Like, so what do you think, and how much right does Russia have to respond, more drastically? And how much more do we push that red line?
Well, I think Russia does need to take decisive action to restore deterrence. Obviously, deterrence has not worked against continuing, U.S. and NATO-backed deep strike attacks against Russian territory, pre-war Russian territory, up to and including Moscow itself. If I were a Russian general or a Russian national security advisor, I would advise Putin to do what he did at the beginning of the war, which was to focus on surrounding or partially surrounding Kyiv to force Zelensky to accept Russia's peace terms, which are overall reasonable. I would say that taking additional Ukrainian territory that Russia doesn't control is not necessarily reasonable. But other than that, I think their terms are mostly reasonable, and something that Ukraine could live with. I published a multitude of articles over the last, especially the last year, since June of last year, detailing why I think Russia's terms, can be tweaked to be acceptable to Ukraine, more in Ukraine's favor. Unfortunately, I did get that peace plan, one of my peace plans. That I published, I think, in just late last year. I got into the hands of a member of Trump's national security cabinet, but unfortunately, I don't think it went hadn't any traction. Never, I don't think the president or the vice president ever saw it. For a while, I thought that Trump was pursuing some of the recommendations that I had, probably just by coincidence, before things kind of got bogged down, and his 22-point peace plan that he presented to the Russians in late April or early May was kind of a take it or leave it. And he decided to give up on the idea of negotiating a peace deal with Russia and Ukraine. But I think the best way, the path to victory has always led through Kyiv. Putin clearly understood that at the beginning of the war, but then he foolishly decided to withdraw Russian forces from northern Ukraine between March 26th and April 4th, in advance of the scheduled signing of the Istanbul Agreement on April 9th of 2022. And if he had simply kept those Russian forces in place, there was nothing Ukraine could do to dislodge them. Then the war would, Zelensky would have been forced to sign that agreement, and all Russian forces would have been withdrawn from pre-war Ukraine in exchange for Ukrainian neutrality and partial demilitarization.
So, my next question will tie into the topic at hand today. Again, as I was speaking to a lot of people in Russia, a lot of people are saying, well, of course, this wasn't Ukraine that did it by itself. It was the CIA, it was the MI6. And then on June 13th, when we seen an operation almost identical to what happened with the spiderweb operation, a lot of people started pointing fingers at Israel. And so this brings me to my topic today, the topic that you wrote the article about. And can you connect those dots? Are the Israeli intelligence did they have anything to do with what happened in Russia? And then we will lead into into Iran and everything.
No, absolutely not. These kind of drone activities have been the planning stage for 8 months, according to the open source intelligence that I've seen. That Israel has been planning this operation for around 8 months. It's certainly possible that they added a drone aspect following this Operation Spiderweb attacks, but there's no evidence whatsoever that Israel was involved in the Ukrainian attacks. There is quite a lot of circumstantial evidence that the CIA and MI6 were involved in those attacks. And immediately after the attack, I called on President Trump to fire CIA Director John Ratcliffe, as I believe that he was, either involved in some, because President Trump claimed that he had no foreknowledge of the attack. And so, if that's the case, and if the CIA was a participant, then that's a rogue CIA operation, and heads need to roll. Because that's something that could, as you mentioned, take us to World War III for no reason. We don't have any reason to want war with Russia. Russia is a manufactured enemy. It is an enemy, but it's an enemy of our own making. And President Trump's foreign policy strategy that he's stated is to transform Russia from an adversary into a geopolitical partner, primarily on the economic side, but also a little bit on the security side, to try to neutralize Russia's alliance with China. And that is what I've been advocating since I think it was 2000 or 2003. It was in 2009 that I said we should partner with Russia against China. And I've been advocating that ever since. And so I was very excited to see Trump get on that bandwagon, but unfortunately, he doesn't seem to know how to accomplish it.
By reading your article, I can see that you are one of the people that are still standing by President Trump, and I really appreciated that side of your article, that you're not giving up on him. So, do you really believe that he had no idea that this sort of an operation was going to go down, as far as the spiderweb operation, and him obviously knowing what Israel did on June 13th? I mean, can we honestly believe that, like, he doesn't know? I mean, this is the most powerful country in the world. He's arguably the most powerful president in the world. How is this possible that his intelligence is not whispering in his ear? I don't believe it. Can you clear the air for that?
Well, I mean, it does seem likely that he had, a limited foreknowledge of the Operation Spiderweb attacks. Although it's not clear to me whether he did or not, because Ukraine operates just like Israel, as kind of a rogue state. Now, granted, Ukraine hasn't invaded any of its enemies, but it's acting to multiple times. It's attacked Russia's nuclear triad. It's crossed the threshold of Russia's nuclear use doctrine. It's attacked missile defense, nuclear missile defense radar systems, taking out at least one of them in the southwest direction, leaving a potential gap through which U.S. nuclear bombers could fly, or even missile strikes. So it's operating in such a way as to maximize the chances of we get into an unnecessary nuclear war with an enemy, superpower enemy, that has at least 2.6 times more operational nuclear weapons than we do. And that is a position that we don't want to get into. I mean, the whole thing that happened with with Trump's bombing of Iran, I warned that if that was a sustained bombing campaign lasting 2 weeks or more, it could get us into a world war. And for what? What are we accomplishing? We're chasing the phantom of imminent Iranian nuclear breakout, when in fact, according to my sources, Iran has had nuclear weapons for perhaps a decade, and they haven't used those nuclear weapons. They've been clearly in the box in terms of not attacking other countries. They have, obviously lost their proxy in Syria, but still have all their other proxies in place. But they just said there was no imminent threat of Iranian nuclear use. All of the Israeli neocon propaganda lies that as soon as they got a nuke, they use it, give it to terrorists to take out Tel Aviv or New York City, have been proven false. And President Trump was manipulated by Israeli intelligence agents within our own government, political, military leadership, to take this action. But fortunately, he did this action in such a way, in kind of a prearranged way, with Iran, giving them advance notice to evacuate all their nuclear scientists, a lot of their centrifuges from Fordow, as well as all of their highly enriched uranium, so as to minimize the chances of major Iranian military retaliation, which was a good move. That was a smart move.
So okay, so we're getting to the topic at hand, and so everything that has happened with Iran and Israel, I like to pronounce it the way my old Jewish friends pronounce it. It sounds cool, but so basically, this whole thing I don't know about, well, I mean, obviously you're a man that's, you're a geopolitical expert, like, a lot better than most people, but this whole thing just looks like it doesn't make any sense. So the rumors that are, kind of floating around online, the first rumor is that obviously Iran had, nuclear weapons. Netanyahu been screaming about it for like the past 30 years. And then he's like, oh, they're a year away, they're a week away, whatever. Tulsi Gabbard a month prior said that there are no evidence that they are developing any nuclear weapons. The second rumor is that, well, they want regime change, and Netanyahu is Trump's daddy, and America is doing Israel's bidding. Now, the third rumor, and this rumor I heard from overseas, from people in Europe, from people in Ukraine and in Russia, they're saying that this was some sort of an agreement between, so basically I'll try to explain it to you. Basically they're saying that the people of our president called the people of Ayatollah and the people of Netanyahu, and they had some sort of an agreement, because this whole thing just doesn't make sense. They're warning each other, like, get your people out, this and that, and so can you please clear the air, because there is a fourth option that I read in your article, and I want to get into it in a few minutes, because no one else talked about this as far as tying Iran to North Korea. But as far as these three rumors that are floating around, which one is the most plausible? Like, what happened really? Because I'm confused. I know a lot of people are confused. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, thank God that it didn't go further, but can you make any sense of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, the war between the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, that was a real war. To use the title of my Substack, it was a real war. There's no evidence to indicate that was a prearranged agreement, for Israel to take out, I don't know, 10 plus, maybe a dozen top Iranian generals, 2 and 3 star generals, essentially, and try to decapitate their military leadership. So they were really at each other's throats. It was, wouldn't say it was no holds barred, because obviously both sides had nuclear weapons and cyber weapons they could have used to escalate. But on the other hand, Trump's bombing of the nuclear sites in Iran, it was, he contacted them in advance. He said it would be a one-off attack. He gave them 24 hours to 48 hours warning. One of my, Iranian immigration sources said that she was being told by her Iranian contacts that were, against the regime, that the Iranians were withdrawing all of their nuclear scientists and all of their highly enriched uranium from those sites from Thursday to Saturday. So they had 48 hours to do it. Other reports said it was done in 24 hours. So it's even possible that Trump may have given them the day of the attack. He might have actually told them, expect these sites to be attacked on this day. If you don't try to shoot down our bombers, it'll be a one-off attack. I'll even force Israel into a permanent ceasefire, and we'll let you attack us back at an abandoned military site if it's a limited strike with maybe a dozen missiles, and ended up being 14. And then Iran responded by, announcing it had launched 14 missiles at the abandoned U.S. military base or evacuated military base in Qatar, which was the largest U.S. military base in the region. So no casualties on either side. I mean, that just seems like carefully choreographed political theater. So that doesn't seem like a real war to me. I was definitely questioning, if that was a serious attempt, to strike Iran. I do think it was serious on Trump's part. He thought it could make a difference and deal a knockout blow to the Iranian nuclear program. But of course, the DIA, top secret leaked DIA report, said differently, so that not one of those 3 nuclear sites were destroyed by the bombing raids.
So this is what I wanted to ask you. When the ceasefire was announced, and then a ceasefire was kind of broken by both sides, the president was, you also point this out in your article, but the president, was asked by a reporter. He actually dropped an F-bomb when talking about Israel. Do you think that he was sincere? Is he really getting kind of frustrated with Israel, or was this again part of a bigger theater?
No, that was definitely real. He definitely was, flabbergasted at Israel. He called Netanyahu and said, "Turn your planes around." Netanyahu said, "No." He said, "Tell you what, instead of 12 Iranian targets, we'll just hit one. We'll hit a radar station, just because we don't want to give up the facade that Israel's boss and America's, kind of our Israel's proxy." So that's what happened, and Trump wasn't happy about that. He wasn't happy that his directive, as the leader of one of the world's premier superpowers, was disobeyed when he had put his entire credibility and on the line, in prestige and support of Israel's unprovoked, aggression against Iran. So that was very real. And in answer to your previous question, about Tulsi Gabbard's assessment, her assessment didn't change. She tried to do some kind of, I don't know, True Social post or X post where she said that people were misconstruing her remarks in March during her Senate confirmation hearings, that there was that Iran had no nuclear program because they hadn't given the intention of developing nukes. But essentially, her two statements were saying the same thing, which is she was claiming that Iran was not developing nukes, but they could if they wanted to, and they could do so within weeks or a few months at most. Again, my assessment is they've had nukes for quite some time, perhaps as long as 2 decades ago. And they've not used those in an aggressive way. There's no evidence that they ever intended to use nukes except as a deterrent against U.S. and Israeli attacks against Iranian territory.
How crazy is it that the president comes out and blatantly says that his director of intelligence, meaning Tulsi Gabbard, she doesn't know what she's talking about? Like, what was that all about? How, like, to me and a lot of people that just sounded insane.
Well, I mean, I too disagree with Tulsi Gabbard's assessment that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. I think that they never stopped developing nuclear weapons. Netanyahu, of course, has been warning about Iranian, nuclear breakouts since 1995. He said that Iran was on track to get nukes by 2000. That was 25 years ago, and we're to expect that if they were really that close, that they don't have nukes today. It's ridiculous. The idea that a terrorist regime, not a rogue terrorist regime, but a regime that does sponsor, terrorist attacks, and both against U.S. troops in Iraq, where they killed, Trump claims 1,000. I've seen reports of 800 U.S. troops that were killed by Iranian-supplied IEDs. And then, of course, proxy attacks against Israel. The idea that a regime like that would not develop nukes when they've had the capability to do so since around 2003, and they were only 3 months away in 2003, is patently ridiculous. So, it's either they're a peace-loving regime that's not going to develop nukes, or they're a regime that's supports terrorism, that's never stopped their nuclear program, and definitely has nukes today. The chances that they're a terrorist regime that is peaceful and doesn't want to have nukes, even though Israel has nukes, is really quite ridiculous. And basically, President Trump was spoon-fed Israeli. Fake Israeli intelligence saying that they were, 15 days away from developing a nuclear weapon and miniaturizing it and putting it atop their missiles so they could nuke Tel Aviv and park a missile on some kind of container or cargo ship to destroy New York City. Was just absurd. There's just no evidence to support that. And U.S. intelligence doesn't support that either. And so basically, President Trump was speaking out against the entire U.S. intelligence community, which admittedly has been wrong about almost everything since Pearl Harbor.
Prove to me that you are alive.
So that leads me to the fourth story that, and I learned this from your article, and so far I can say, because I'm always studying, I'm always reading, I'm always looking around what's going on. So basically, you're the first one that I read saying this and making the connection between Iran and North Korea. How did you make that connection? How plausible is all of this? And the whole story with, well, maybe North Korea is keeping some of the nuclear weapons for Iran. This was extremely interesting. I never heard anyone else say this.
Well, I've been aware of North Korean and Iranian nuclear and missile cooperation for probably the last 15 years, and I've been monitoring that. But essentially, my supposition has been for the last several years, probably since, I don't know, 2017 or thereabouts, that Iran actually tested a nuclear weapon in North Korea's underground facilities. It was one of those 6 underground nuclear tests that North Korea has performed, publicly, that they've announced, because that would be an ideal way to do it. Everyone assumes that a country has to have a nuclear test before they have an operational nuclear arsenal, and I think that was the case with Iran's as well. There have been some earthquakes in Iran near their military facilities that a lot of people have questioned that might have been underground Iranian nuclear tests, and I tend to think that's a likely possibility as well for at least one of them, because there have been several since over the last, I would say, 9 months. Most recently, I think just a few days ago. So North Korea has certainly. Everyone knows that they've been helping Iran develop long-range missiles. Iran has had an ICBM program since 2005 for 20 years. There's not a single other case in the world of a country developing ICBMs that doesn't have doesn't have nuclear weapons. So it's very suspicious, and it just another indicator that they probably do.
Okay, so in that case, the argument was, if Iran really has the nuclear capabilities, why would Israel risk attacking them? Like, no one is risking attacking North Korea. It's because it's like, okay, we know they have nuclear weapons. With Iran, it's like, we're not sure. You point out, you've been covering this for a long time, that most likely they do. So why would Israel, attempt something like this, knowing that they possibly could have, nuclear weapons, and they could retaliate with them?
Well, I think they just made a calculated decision that Israel's superior nuclear arsenal would be sufficient to deter Iranian nuclear response, and I think that's valid. It's a reckless presumption, but obviously it was proven correct, because Iran knows that if it did nuke Israel, that it could risk a potential U.S. or likely U.S. or Israeli nuclear retaliation, because Iran could, let's face it, Iran could wipe Israel off the face of the earth in terms of taking out their major cities in a nuclear first strike, and Israel just wouldn't know that their incoming hypersonic missiles were nuclear armed until it was too late. But the U.S. would most likely nuke them in response. So that's why the Iranian nuclear threat is much overhyped. I mean, they have one of the smallest nuclear arsenals in the world. They're incredibly deterred. There's not a single instance in history where they've had that happen. Where there's been a nuclear aggression outside of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that we did to Japan, 80 years ago.
So this is what I wanted to ask you. As far as so we know that Israel is famous for their Iron Dome. We even had our president talking about developing something like this in the United States. To a lot of people, this seems crazy. Israel is the size of New Jersey. But this is what I wanted to ask. How much damage do you think Iran inflicted on Israel? And the rumor that it was a lot of damage, and that's why Netanyahu started to basically get on the phone and ask our president, like, let's get some sort of an agreement. What do you have to say about this? Is Israel now exposed?
Yeah, I think that there has been a lot of damage that was inflicted by Iran and Israel with the missile strikes, and so that certainly was a factor in Netanyahu's decision to accept Trump's demand for a ceasefire. Again, I don't think it. I think he was hoping that there would be a sustained U.S. bombing campaign for regime change, but once he found out that Trump wasn't willing to do that, he was willing to accept the ceasefire.
Yeah, and as you said, that a lot of Iran's generals and things like that. I know that nuclear scientists were killed. So everyone is talking about nowadays about the world shifting into a new multipolar, geopolitical landscape. History is changing. What I'm seeing is that it's two polarities now, because now it's like what we have is the global West and the global South, with, like, I don't know, Russia included. Um, the whole world seems to be now looking at the West as countries that basically don't care about the UN Charter. They do basically anything that they want, and all the other superpowers are looking around and saying, "Well, if they're not following the Charter, if they don't care about what we came up with in UN, then who's stopping us from like?" I'm trying to kind of piece up this question: is the West about to be completely cut out from the rest of the world, and the BRICS nations and things like that are about to, start their whole new thing, and we will be left in the back? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think, yeah, the whole idea of a U.S.-led international rules-based liberal order is kind of a farce, because the U.S. has imposed the rules, but it doesn't follow them. So that's something that Russian President Vladimir Putin says a lot, is that it's fine to have a rules-based order, but if the leading power that created that order it refuses to follow the rules and respect the rights of other countries, to have indivisible security, as Russia likes to say, that has mutual security measures to ensure the security of all nations, not just an enemy alliance. Then it's an order that they can't work, and Russia and China have banded together to form their own new order. It's outside of the U.S.-led order, that where there are creating their own international order, kind of to counter ours. And if we don't adapt, then that order may become prevalent as they overpower the U.S. And its allies.
I know that maybe necessarily you're not an economist. I've heard Richard Wolff and people like that speaking about the fall of the empire. What do you think about that notion? Do you think that we are at declining stages of what is known for the past couple hundred years as the American empire? Do you believe in that?
Yeah, I think the U.S. empire it's on its way out. We are a declining power, unfortunately. Russia and China are rising powers. Certainly demographically, that they are going down, but in terms of overall power, that they're rising powers, and there's little we can do to counter that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have a couple more questions. I'll get you out of here. And again, thank you so much for your time. So this is what I want to know. The whole story with Iran and regime change, right? We know historically that regime changes, it's a two-part question. We know that historically regime changes are not done like that. We've seen what perhaps a regime change looks like, in Ukraine and in other parts of the world. It's not done by what we've seen with Israel attacking and things like that. So this is what I wanted to know. As far as you can assess, Which country at this point is more dangerous to the Middle East? Israel, with everything that they're doing in Gaza and them just bullying countries around them, or is it Iran?
Well, it's definitely Israel. Israel has not proven a reliable U.S. ally. It's become a strategic liability. It's tried to rope President Trump and the U.S. into World War III, a full-scale regional war with Iran. That would be a regime change war that would, not only destabilize the Middle East, but likely would escalate to World War III. And when I say escalate to World War III, I mean, Russia and China were powerful Iranian allies they're all members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which Putin rightly described as a reborn Warsaw Pact. Do I think China and Russia would intervene directly in a war between the U.S. and Iran? No, I don't think that. I think that China would likely move against Taiwan while the U.S. is bogged down in a unnecessary Middle Eastern war with Iran to invade Taiwan, and there would be very little that the U.S. could do about it. For multiple reasons. Number one, they already have military superiority over us in the Western Pacific and South China Sea region. The Chinese, the PLA Navy rules the waves, according to a former intelligence director for U.S. PAC fleet, and they have ruled the waves in the second island chain, which is kind of the contested domain in the far Western Pacific. So they could pretty much, take Taiwan whenever they want. They've been ready to do so since 2020. They have the largest Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force in the world, the largest nuclear-capable ballistic missile force. And as far as Russia, I mean, Russia's best move, what Russia has U.S. intelligence has estimated that Russia would probably mass troops on NATO's borders, ideally in Belarus, to kind of draw U.S. troops there too at the time of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And troops in Belarus, that's an ideal place to put Russian troops and concentrate their forces, because that would give them the opportunity not only to invade Poland and Lithuania, or threaten Poland and Lithuania, but to reinvade Kyiv as well, which, as we've discussed, is the key to a Russian victory over Ukraine.
As far as Israel and Iran goes, can you tell us, you're an expert, are we out of the woods as far as that goes, or is there still a chance that a fire can be started back up over there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly with Biden started a lot of fires. He started the fire in Ukraine. Obviously, I wouldn't blame him for the fire that was started between Hamas and Israel with the October 2023 attacks. But in terms of breaking the ceasefire, Israel, I think it was the day after the ceasefire, the Israeli government came out and said, we'll violate the ceasefire with impunity if we feel it's necessary to retarget and further damage Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities. So Iran has not made any threats of violating the ceasefire. They weren't responsible. I mean, I do think they certainly green lighted the Hamas attacks on Israel in October of 2023. So I think Israel is understandably angry about that, but they've killed pretty much all the Iranian military leaders and IRGC leaders and Hamas leaders that were responsible for that terrorist attack. But yeah, in terms of instability and threatening war and being a rogue state, there's no greater threat to peace in the Middle East than Israel.
Coming back to America, and I'll get you out of here, just a couple more questions, and I can't thank you enough. Coming back to America, 10, 15 years ago, when I would tell people about such things as, deep state or globalists or things, people would look at me like I'm crazy. Now we're kind of seeing that, yeah, this could be plausible, this could be real. You said something interesting in your article. You said the the small amount of neocons that are still left. So my question is the order in Washington really changing? Has that order been changing because of President Trump, or do we still have those sponsors and donors that we are not, basically seeing for ourselves, but they are, kind of pulling the strings? Like, what do you think? Do you have faith that things are actually changing in Washington?
Well, when Trump came to power, I had great hopes that there would be a major change in U.S. foreign policy. But as we saw in the first Trump administration, he appointed all the wrong people to be his cabinet members and senior advisors, both political and military. And he pursued a very conventional interventionist type strategy. He killed Soleimani. He did towards the end. He did try to withdraw us from Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq, and it was his own neocon appointees that countermanded those orders. He stated twice that we were pulling out all our troops in Syria, and then doubled the number of U.S. troops in Syria since he came to office. Now there's some more reports that he's trying to reduce them again. But he had so many good ideas, comprehensive peace agreement with Russia that he tried in both of his terms now and failed both times. Unfortunately, I think his foreign policy is much more in sync with Biden's foreign policy and doesn't really represent much of a new direction at all. I mean, the only difference between Biden and Trump is Biden wasn't willing to bomb Iran. Trump was. I mean, Bush and Obama weren't willing to bomb Iran. Only John McCain was, and he was thankfully never served as president of the United States. And then the other change is he talked. He's engaged in serious diplomacy with Russia. I mean, he hasn't been willing to negotiate a peace deal, but at least he's been trying to normalize diplomatic relations with Russia. But he actually is presided over more, tougher sanctions on Russia already. So he's actually, set back. He's doing things that are provoking Russia. That if they didn't have Putin in charge, we could see direct Russian strikes on NATO, most likely massive cyber attacks.
Come to think of it, and now a lot of these things are actually coming into light, that meaning American intelligence agencies have really done a lot of dirt in the world. Like, you can call it bad, you can call it good. We don't really know, but going back to even the Mujahideens in Afghanistan, or the Taliban, or ISIS, or whatever it is, it seems, or overthrowing powers like in Ukraine, and this, like, there's a lot of dirt that we have been doing, and now this dirt is actually coming into light. And I just want to dispel a rumor, because in America we're taught to let's say, hate Russians, right? In Russia, young people, they love America. They really do. They love our movies. They love our pop culture. They love America. They would like to be friends with America. This is a very important question, and it will lead me to my final question. But how do you think that we gain back the global trust? Like, what steps do we take? Because right now, for a lack of a better term, we just look crazy. We look like we're out of control. And, so how would we gain back that trust globally?
Well, we have to prioritize diplomatic solutions to ongoing conflicts. I mean, that's exactly what President Trump pledged to do after he became president. He said he wanted to be a president who ended our forever wars and stopped new ones from breaking out. He wanted to be a transformational peace president. He hasn't done that. The only two military conflicts he's ended have been the two that he started with Yemen and Iran, and the other conflicts in Gaza. Gaza, of course, he temporarily stopped with 2 months of an outstanding ceasefire agreement that he helped push through just the day before he became president. And then in Ukraine, he's really done nothing. He's only continued the war. The war has continued to escalate, as we discussed, with the Operation Spiderweb attacks targeting Russia's nuclear triad. And if Trump really opposed that, he would have stated right after the attacks, the U.S. condemns. I think the White House said, we didn't participate in the attacks, but it should have been much more forceful than that. It should have been, we disown the Ukrainians for doing that. This is extremely unproductive. It's against U.S. Security policy and strategy, and there's going to be ramifications, and we should have at least temporarily suspended, as Trump did, for 1 week, from March 4th to March 11th. We should have suspended all U.S. military and security assistance to Ukraine. But I fear that the exact opposite is the case. I strongly believe that the U.S. and the British shared offensive intelligence with the Ukrainians to enable those attacks to be partially successful.
Yeah, because now, kind of being reminded of what Putin told Tucker Carlson when he kind of laughed at him and said, well, it doesn't matter what president comes into office in Washington because there are people that, are more stronger than the president. So two more questions. The last question will be easy, I promise you. So what do you think will happen with Ukraine now that there is an option for Ukraine to be buying weapons instead of, and we just heard that Canada, handed out Zelensky, I don't know how many billions. I guess they either don't want to realize or they're just blind to the fact that it's like a big money laundering machine in Ukraine. So what do you think is going to happen? Will this war continue to, I don't know, 2040? Like what's your assessment on that?
Well, as I think I mentioned, the Russian way of warfare is not to take territory in Ukraine. It's to destroy the Ukrainian army itself. So Putin is, he hasn't fought the war the way I would have wanted to fight the war, which again would be to never withdraw Russian troops from Kyiv, surround that city, force Zelensky to flee to Lviv to establish, kind of a Western Ukrainian government, or even a Ukrainian government in exile, force him to sign a peace deal. But instead, Russia has, the Russian strategy has been to, attrit the Ukrainian armed forces by 2 million Ukrainian troops that they've killed or wounded in battle since the war began over 3 years ago. And that's been a very effective strategy, but it's been a slow strategy. It's been a strategy, where we've seen them take only a very small sliver of additional territory since the Russian unilateral withdrawal of all Russian troops from 30% of Russian occupied Ukraine. Whereas they had 27% of Ukrainian territory under Russian control, it's now closer to 19%. Ukraine is running out of troops. They're down to 350,000 active duty troops or less. Russia has, according to the Russians, they have 640,000 troops in Ukraine, and then an additional 150,000 to 200,000 or so in reserve along Ukraine's borders. All they need to do is move those reserve troops, maybe 200,000 reserve troops to Belarus, start a new Russian northern offensive, and include that maybe some troops in the Sumy region, and that would overwhelm Ukrainian defenses because they simply don't have the troops, the manpower to defend against new Russian offensive that far away from the main front in the southeast of Ukraine, in the Donbass region, Kherson and Zaporizhia.
Yeah, Diana Panchenko, I'm pretty sure you're aware of her, did a very interesting piece. It came out yesterday, and she basically said that Ukrainian nationalism is killing Ukraine, and by her assessment, Ukraine will disappear by 1946. Again, I was born and raised in Western Ukraine.
You mean 2046?
2046, yeah. That basically, if this will continue the way the war is moving, then by 2046, Ukraine will be gone completely off the map. I was born and raised in Ukraine. I was breastfed with the propaganda, and I actually agree with her that Ukrainian nationalism has been killing Ukraine. So my last question, and this is with all jokes aside, Mr. Pyne, why are you not running for the presidency? Why are you not putting in your can? All jokes aside, I never voted, but that would be the first time that I vote. Have you ever thought about it? And is this in your plan?
No, I did. I did run for. Actually, I had an abortive run for Congress in New Mexico in 2008 before a state Senate seat opened up, and I was the front runner for that state Senate seat in the 2008 election. But then I got a job offer I couldn't refuse in Utah, which is a much more conservative state. So I decided to drop out of the race, which I would have won. I still only lost that state Senate race by 7 points back in 2008 in the primary. But and there was no Democrat opponent, so I would have, if I won the primary, I would have automatically been appointed to the state senate. But unfortunately, New Mexico, the state senate has always been dominated by the Democrats the last 80 plus years. So I knew I couldn't accomplish much if I stayed there and got elected. So I don't regret that decision, even though I'd love to have been a state senator. That said, my congressional run would have been kind of a token run. I would have been the nominee in a Democrat, majority seat. So I would have lost that race. I haven't really considered running for a higher office since. And I think my role is better as, I've worked as kind of a policy director in a number of congressional campaigns, including a U.S. Senate campaign. I worked for Senator Mike Lee, was his national security policy director, and headed up his military advisory committee in his initial 2010 campaign that was successful and got him elected to the Senate. So I really look at myself as more valuable in the policy arena. And obviously I'd love to be on, Fox News or some other larger networks. And that would kind of be my objective rather than running for federal office.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure, just like you, I love America. I'm a big patriot. I want this country to thrive. I want to be a part of this country thriving. And a lot of people are getting disappointed with politics, and on both sides. We even seen with this whole last thing with Iran and Israel how even the MAGA camp was dividing and pointing fingers and things like that. And then I thought to myself, like, we still have good, noble men like David Pyne. So, I would actually go vote for you. But if the country calls upon you, would you ever actually consider it?
Absolutely, yeah. If President Trump wanted to, appoint me to his National Security Council, for example, I had a colonel and a brigadier general retired that, were strong supporters of Trump doing that. I don't think they ever had a conversation with Trump, but they told me that I'd be an excellent addition, perhaps as the Russia director on the National Security Council or some kind of role like that. I don't see him appointing me to any cabinet position, and probably not even a sub cabinet position, but something like that. Some kind of director role in his national security apparatus. I would absolutely love that, and I would love to advise him and help him to make make America great again and make our foreign policy great again and put America first in terms of our national security policy and ensure the safety and security of 286 million Americans, not only today, but for decades to come.
Yeah, I really hope so that we have more men like you, because what it seems like is that right now in Washington there are these like really old, I'm sorry to say, like these really old men that still think that Russia is the Stalinist Soviet Union in the 1930s, and and Iran is like, I don't know, 300 years back, like, and then we have people like you. We have people that know things. We have people like you that have information and are in contact, and like you're looking at the whole world, through a cool lens. And so that's why I would wish, for more men like you to be in Washington. Um, Again, Mr. Pine, thank you so much for taking the time. I know your time is precious. I know that every big YouTuber wants for you to come on and say your piece. So I'll let you take us out of here. Do you have? And I just want to remind everyone, all the links, everything to find David Pine will be in the description. Please, please, please go check out the articles. They are awesome, and follow David Pyne, and keep your fingers crossed that one day we will have a president like this. So, Mr. Pyne, I'll let you take us out of here. Do you have anything else to say?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be interviewed on your program, and I would like to encourage all your viewers to subscribe to my Substack, the Real War Substack, at dpyne.substack.com. Once again, dpyne.substack.com, and also my X account, which is at America First Con, CON, to get my latest national security updates. My X feed is still it's way too low. It's a couple thousand plus subscribers. My Real War Substack is chasing down 10,000, but that's still way too low. I'd love to see it in the 100,000 range, so I can get the word out and try to get these peace policy recommendations to the White House.
Yeah, we will definitely work on that. We're supporting you all the way. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the one, the only Mr. David Pyne. Mr. Pyne, thank you so much. God bless you, sir.
Thanks. God bless you as well.